Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays,
where we cover everything Dynamics great and small. Well, it's mid-May, Bart.
Love that mid-May. It's
Yeah,
sun shining, starting to warm up pretty nice. I love it.
yeah. It's like it's summer. It's like so we live in Minnesota, so we have 4 months of awesomeness coming up. So this is
Yeah.
kind of one of those. It's like it was like the average temperature like averages 70 and above until like September 24th. So I was super happy about that. But anyways, let's get on the important things. Do you have a good dad joke for me, Bart?
Well, of course, of course.
Okay, what do you got?
I decided to go with a chemistry theme today.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in the periodic table, why do they consider helium, curium, and barium the medical elements?
God, it's like, okay, what's the table on that? Helium, curium, and okay. I don't know, Bart, tell me.
Because if the doctors can't heal him or cure him, they end up burying him.
Oh, mine's worse.
Oh, good.
Okay, yes, okay. Okay.
Well, lay it on me. What do you got?
Okay, so Bart, why can't you use the password beef stew?
It's too in your face.
It's not stroganoff.
It's not strong. Oh, okay.
That's awful, isn't it? I really like that one. Yeah, that one's super awesome. Okay, again, our content's way better than our jokes. So lay it on me. What do you got?
All right, well, here we go. Always Power Platform seems to take first on the stage, so here we go. We've got a new generally available capability for blocking unmanaged customizations. So this has been a preview feature for a while. I'm not going to dwell on it. We've talked a little bit about it in the past. You just need to flip it on, and that will protect your ALM processes. So in any of your QA or prod environments, you can prevent people from making unmanaged changes or importing unmanaged customizations. So it's a really nice feature to allow you to enforce what you're trying to enforce in the kind of ALM best practices. Center of Excellence Starter Kit, May release is out. If you haven't downloaded it yet, please do install it. There's always good stuff in there for updates, and take advantage. Another kind of announcement, doesn't really have a link to go with it, but Synapse Link and Link to Fabric, really powerful ways to take all the data from Dataverse and F&O and get it into a analytics area that can be analyzed from Power BI's standpoint or any other analytics engine from that standpoint. Also much easier, but we've always had this restriction where your repository for the data, whether that was Fabric capacity or whether that was the data lake that you provisioned in Azure, had to be in the same region that your F&O instance or your Dataverse instance were provisioned in. And it was sometimes even hard to figure out where that was, but you always had to put them in the same spot because it was just too much data moving across the network to keep up if you didn't have it in the same region. Well, we have beefed up our internal processes and networking capabilities and removed that restriction to be in the same region. So you can have your data repository on East US and your Dataverse on West US and turn it on, it'll just work. So that's a really nice update. Maker welcoming. So we've talked a little bit about this. If you have a managed environment, that you can put this welcome content for a maker that logs into that environment to remind them of what this environment's for. And we can allow this to be a new message fairly regularly if you would like. And every time it changes, it will reprompt that there's a new welcome message for users that come in here, and they can still dismiss it and say, don't show it to me again. And it won't, as long as you leave it the same and you change your message, it'll show it to them again, and then they can dismiss it. So it's a nice way to just kind of keep in front of your users as an admin team with things you would like them to know about the given environment they're working in. Another big one. This has been asked for at least 20, 25 years. Dataverse is getting a recycle bin. So people deleting records, they're not permanently deleted right away. We're going to have a time period where they're sitting in the recycle bin where they'll be restorable by admins. So this is a very much a preview feature today, but I had to talk about it once I saw that it was out there. So rejoice, all you people who have always wanted a better recycle bin plan for Dataverse. It's coming. Another thing that is pretty cool that has been asked for a long time is our cloud flows are fairly execution heavy. And to be able to look at the telemetry of those has been a little bit problematic. And Center of Excellence Starter Kit can help a little, but it's usually more on the inventory side of that than on all the execution side of what's gone on with those cloud flows. Well, we now are turning on this ability to log the cloud flow run history as a table in Dataverse. And this is another preview feature. You'll be able to lock some of it down. Here's all the data elements that come inside of that table with each run that happens. It will be stored in Dataverse for 28 days. And if you throw that out in Fabric or someplace else regularly, you don't really care. You might even ratchet this down to be less than 28 days, which is a configurable thing. But we've got lots and lots of goodness coming for those folks who have wanted to see all of their cloud flow run executions to be able to look at the details of them in a spot. Well, that's now landing in Dataverse. This next one is a really nice batch of capabilities that are in the Power Platform to be able to put AI on top of the data that you care about with your prompt in front of it as a plugin for your copilots. So it's a really well done article. And there are some videos that go along with some of this that if anyone's interested, just send us a note to the DFF Fridays and I'll respond to that. But you can develop in the Power Automate when you call the AI Builder connector for generating GPT text. You can build the prompt. And when you're building that prompt, you can tell the prompt how to ground its data from tables and columns in those tables in Dataverse. So you can really restrict exactly what data it is looking across, and you can infuse different data elements into the prompt from the data. It just does a really nice job of putting all of that out there. And then you can use these new PowerFX functions to use some of that stuff that you've just built. So all kinds of goodness in different ways of leveraging Power Platform and things that you can do inside of Copilot Studio or out just in Power Automate with being able to infuse AI into all of that and craft exactly what you need. So I thought that one is worth a deep dive on in some of these new AI capabilities to take control of them and use them in really cool ways. In Power BI, we have had the Power Apps visual for quite some time to host an embedded app that has been generally available. And that could include a button that triggered Power Automate to work. But if you really just needed automation to happen, there was no generally available visual to just host a flow. Well, now there is. And so you can embed that Power Automate visual as a supported, generally available feature. And this blog article does tell you a little bit about how you can leverage that, but I think most people are probably familiar with what those concepts are. I'm not going to dig into it. Power Pages. So as we made nice updates to the Power Pages user interface in Power Platform Admin Center, I talked about that a couple shows ago, where we've got way better reporting of seeing what's going on and are there things that you ought to change from a security standpoint and all that kind of stuff. Well, we've now decided, well, since all of that telemetry is propped up to enable those features in the Power Platform Admin Center, why not land a lot of that stuff in the advisor capability so that advisor will not just look at Power Apps now, but look at a bunch of Power Pages stuff as well and give you those recommendations of, oh, here is a thing that's risky. Here is something you ought to go do to kind of use best practices for managing that stuff. So advisor covers it now. If you're a Power Pages developer and you're editing your page in VS Code, we have made some changes on the back end so that while in VS Code, you're now going to get co-presence, not just in the Power Pages Design Studio, which it's been there for a little bit, but even in VS Code while working on your Power Pages stuff, you'll see co-presence and the ability for collaboration to happen inside of VS Code. So if you are a web developer who's working on Power Pages and you're doing some of that manual editing of HTML and other capabilities to call APIs and stuff right in VS Code and manage things, take a look at this to see what all you can do that is recently lit up. Environment groups and routing, another preview feature that we've talked about before, where we can group environments together and give them all the same security constraints and things like that. And then the environment routing for being able to say when a new user logs into Power Platform, instead of them just dropping into the default environment and creating more of the mess that the default environment kind of is in most organizations, we can drop new users into their own developer environment to sort of learn things and play around in a container that protects their stuff from everybody else, and that they have to worry only about their own mess then. And those kind of go hand in hand, because you'll usually be dropping all of those new developer environments into environment groups so that they're automatically just constrained and secured in the ways you would like them to be with the right DLP rules and everything else. And so if you've routed them in there and they're already protected by the group membership, that's just a nice package. And that's all generally available, supported. Use it in production workloads. Last thing in the Power Platform realm that I'll quickly mention is we have now created a well-architected node just for Power Platform. And I wasn't that familiar with the well-architected nomenclature, but apparently that is quite common in the Azure space. And there are a lot of different Azure well-architected platforms and solutions that you can look for best practices. Well, because we've now got this for Power Platform as well, that you can jump over into the well-architected site and look at the various pillars that we have for how to make things more reliable, how to make them more secure, how to have operational excellence among the admin teams and even DevOps teams, how to increase the performance efficiency of all the assets that you build, and how do you think about experience optimization for the user base. So those are the sort of pillars, and within each pillar, we've got all kinds of guidance, including this really nice assessment tool that lets you start an assessment and decide what's important to you in that assessment. So if I actually started one earlier and it's telling me if I want to get in here, I've got a whole bunch of questions that I have not yet answered. So it'll have, well, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done that? Have you done this? And just a bunch of really nice constructed to-do items in checklist format to say, here are a lot of the various things categorized in different categories, and then what happens inside of each category from a guidance standpoint to just let you assess your maturity and all those kind of things. So that's a really nice package of functionality to make sure that you can treat Power Platform assets as enterprise assets in those different pillars with lots of different guidance by Microsoft. Got a couple of things that are kind of specific to the customer engagement stack as well for articles to look over. This first one relies a little bit on the same capabilities that I was talking about above with this low-code AI capabilities. It's just doing some things specifically in the customer service module to create those prompt plugins in the context of what your service users need. And that you can make these plugins look at Dataverse data, but you can also make these plugins actually go outside of that and call other APIs as well. So it's interesting to think about what are my users wanting to do and what kinds of phrases might they type in, and when they do, what systems need to call to have data returned to let AI then give them the answer. And in this support scenario, we've got a nice kind of well-architected blog to help you think through that a little bit and give you some guidance. And the last one is a feature that's out there that may not be particularly well known, because this one I believe is still in preview, but this is an ability to let Copilot watch what the agents are doing to solve customer problems and resolve cases, and to see if knowledge exists that's similar to what was just used to solve those cases. And if not, prompt the user to say, can we use what you just did to stitch together a knowledge article really quick and let you take a look at it and make your own edits and submit that through the approval process for letting the people responsible for maintaining knowledge kind of work through it, polish it up, and publish it so that others can leverage from that. So pretty cool that Copilot's watching for that and try to help create that at scale for those who are trying to make knowledge repositories even more helpful for your customer service staff. So Dan, those are my updates for this fortnight.
Yeah, it's like there's always a ton going on in the Power Platform arena.
For sure.
So I don't have a long list, but there's some density, especially toward the bottom. So as I'd mentioned on the last show, I'm going to cover the cross app and the supply chain today. So there's quite a bit underneath there. But of course, there's some stuff in Copilot or for Business Central. So first of all, for Business Central, there's over 30,000 businesses that have Business Central installed. I thought that was just amazing, right? So just the rapid growth of Business Central is impressive. But this is an article all about what we're doing with the co-pilots and the innovations that we have in this. Now, the first thing is we have a natural language query within Business Central that's going to allow you to define the information, explain it to you, and guide you through what you need to do. Not unlike what we have in finance and supply chain. So you can find the records faster. And there's also follow-up questions. It'll suggest follow-up questions, 3 of them, to say, do you want to do this, to actually help anticipate and refine the searches you want to go through. And then there's some information about, like I've talked about, marketing suggestions using with Shopify that'll write that marketing text for you based upon the input that you have into that chat GPT or the sidecar Copilot interface. So there's also been some updates in simplifying the sales order. And we'll talk about this in the F&O as we come along too. But it's going to suggest lines to you. Actually, instead of going through this different catalog, if you're in one certain category, suggest the lines that you may want to input into that. So it uses some AI into that. There's also some automate some workflows using the natural language, which we've seen, of course, is like Bart's talked about those things all the time within the Power Plat, but now that's actually pushed into the Business Central. Bank reconciliation, I've talked about that many times within the finance and supply chain. It's trickled its way down to Business Central. And also some e-invoicing and that e-invoice matching, so electronically matches those e-invoices as they come up. And this one, I thought it was kind of interesting too. It's so you can use a natural language interface to query the data to give you some information. So you can actually create analytical views within Business Central based upon the information that you want to pull out, especially when there's a lot of records. It makes it really easy instead of going through some complex SQL query type of interface into that. So simplifying that. And it's again, our whole world's changing with all these co-pilots. Inventory forecasting is now available within Business Central. Late payment predictions, so that's like a finance co-pilot that we've had in finance and supply chain for quite a while, and then the cash flow is trickled down to the Business Central. So again, all these things are kind of catching in together along with the cash flow. So quite a bit of, some of this is not new information, but it is new to it actually puts it together very nicely within that article, that cloud blog. The next thing, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but it's like some project operations tax. So if you're a tax person that uses project operations, we've made some updates into this, right? So first of all, we're going to streamline the cost price and the sales price calcs into that to run the tax, which can be quite complex, and update those tax, based upon those tax rules. And we'll post amounts, including those sales tax as it goes through, the use tax into that. If we have any funding source limits, so it's especially if you're working government contracts, or it's not to exceed by this funding source that goes to the next source, are in there with those tax amounts. Also, committed costs and PO corrections are also in that. So quite an article that kind of goes into the detail about how the taxes are calculated with the markup tax, and it's what's the end result, and kind of explains it, because it can be kind of dense of information and to understand that. So if you're using project operations and tax, you want to take a look at that. And then there's, some updates and project operations updates. So remember, there's 3 types. There's the resource base, stock base, and then access or the light base, right? So let's go into the resource base first. And there's been quite a few updates into this. So the first thing is subcontracting. So we've enhanced the vendor invoicing experience. So it allows a real 3-way match progress, just like as you go through, and to accurately validate that as it goes through the process. Because remember, some of this is in CE interface and some of it is in the F&O interface, or the finance and supply chain interface, and they kind of match up. So that's enhanced. Also with the subcontract, so we can see that the actuals progressing against that versus the budget and what they reported onto that. So there's been some updates into that for subcontracting. So the budget management, so now we can actually create a budget within CE and it integrates with the finance. So the actual execution of the budget, the actuals, are going to show up in the finance module, the D365 finance or the F&O platform. So now you can actually track that, you can create that in the CE and then be able to track it anywhere within the whole system. So that interface has gotten better. There's a modern quote. And so I'm not going to drill down into this, but with a modern quote, it's a clean single form layout instead of having to drill down into different forms and okay, what's the what's the task that needs to be involved, what's the items, the services and everything else that we have to drill down into. So this allows just a nice clean interface. There's some KPIs within that. It has a clean interface, so you don't have to be drilling down back and forth with this. But it's also scenario based. It's like, okay, what's the real quote person have to do? And quite frankly, with a lot of the ERPs, it's like including our ERPs, they seem to be designed by accountants for accountants instead of role based. How do you actually interface with this as a salesperson or a procurement person or so on and so forth? So modern code is one of those that we changed it around. So so it actually reflects what a salesperson or a project quoting person is going to do. We also use updates in some project categories. So now we can actually use a catalog on that, and the catalog with the categories underneath that will be like, is this an expense? Is this a time? Is this a material go against that? And then based upon that type, it's like it's easier to post upon that, right? And then be able to track and give different characteristics within those procurement categories. We also enabled POs on the project PO on the project ops, right? So this one creates within the project operations in the customer engagement to be able to record non-stock materials against that procurement or that persona. Remember, this is not stocked; it's not the F&O component, but it's the stock part of that. So there's some other features along with this. The modern quote, so we have a nested grid within that, so you can actually see the grid for the line items and the different subcomponents into this. There's cost plus pricing, right, for the labor rates. And then we have advanced subcontracting capabilities into the resource base. So under stock base, there's just a couple little updates onto this. So first of all, we're doing the modern code, as we just talked about the resource basis, like we made sure the interface is a lot better. And then the nested quote on that with that the new experience within that sales user interface. Now on the light version, there's very little. First of all, is we have the subcontracting, so we'd enhance that invoicing experience to make it a whole lot easier. And then the project budget management. So we talked about like setting a budget within the CE that was tracking the actuals within F&O. Light does not integrate into that finance back end, but we're allowed to, now you can do the project budget management on the light version. So not a ton of updates there, but important ones. But getting the meat of what we want to talk about today is, for me, is finance and supply chain. So on cross-platform updates for finance and supply chain, there's been a couple Copilot updates. And it's like, so Copilot is going to be the theme that we're probably going to be talking about for the next year or two, almost every show, or if not more.
We are a Copilot company for sure.
Exactly. So just FYI, so everybody out there, your job is going to change because of all these co-pilots. It's going to actually change the way that we interface and work every day. So that's what we're kind of seeing, and we're seeing this in our products. So the first one is we can extend Copilot with client plugins, right? So this way you can extend the copilots within finance and supply chain. So you can invoke a natural language interface, right? And it can say things like, okay, ask it questions that require some business knowledge or some calculations, or find some data and give me some, give me a coherent answer on that. So, so you can actually do some customization within those copilots. Now, the couple of restrictions on that, it's like, first of all, it's got to be created copilot for the F&O chat, and that's the Copilot Studio, right? So that's where you actually develop all those Copilot Studios. It's really quite a nice interface. It's pretty powerful. And then you have to create that method using X++. So that's a pro dev interface to actually get that to work. So just FYI on that. And then we can actually extend Copilot with a record context, right? And so this will create contextual inputs. And so that'll give a list of available things based upon the menu items that you see. So it's like, so if you're into purchase orders, it'll give you a list of those different components and drill into that function to that. So it's content sensitive of what you're drilling into. And again, this is private data. It's only your data that they can see that doesn't go outside of Copilot. I know there's been a lot of paranoia out there. And not undeserved as this new technology, but it's safe. Your data is safe and secure, and I think we'll probably be mentioning that a lot more as we go through this, with these copilots. Now, the last thing I have to share is like supply chain 10.0.40, but there's a lot here, right? So first of all, there's the demand planning copilot. So demand planning is the new demand planning is the forecasting algorithms within there. But what it does is it gives you a plan, right? It's okay, here's the forecast and here's the chart that it's going to have. But give me some insights, right? So you have a natural language interface to say, okay, tell me what matters. It's like what's significant about these, and it'll give you some insights that you may not find as you just look at the chart and say, okay, this is affecting that, or this has gone up 30% over the last period of time, and it's trending this way, so on and so forth. So that's a real powerful tool. It's like, I love it that the system can tell me things that I don't know that I would want to know, that I don't know to look at. The second thing is it's like, suggest questions within the Copilot. And I talked about this a little bit on the Business Central. But it's like, okay, if you ask it on the sidecar, ask it a question, it's like it'll give you an answer and it'll give you 3 suggestions. It's like things you might want to delve into a little bit further, or suggestive suggestions or questions that that you might want to ask. So it's like, okay, it'll bring the box up. Do you want to ask it this certain question? It's like when you use it, it's pretty slick. Again, tell me something I want to know about this data that I already have. These next few are kind of mundane, but it's kind of important. So this one's like it's called product bundles. Was like within the sales thing. This is not a product bundle in the traditional sense. It's like all these supply chain people. It's like, okay, if we want a kit or a product bundle together, this means in the back end, if you actually populate and produce, invoices and so on and so forth. And if you archive or delete those sales orders or those purchase orders, those transaction sets, forever, they'd be forever lost until you have this. But this bundle will actually recreate those invoices for you. So that's what it really means. So when you look at the title on this, it's kind of misleading. If you drill down into it, it makes a whole lot of sense. The next thing is it's like, okay, this was a query inventory without a site or a warehouse. So on inventory visibility, you can see the inventory of multiple different locations, right? So it doesn't have to be within finance or supply chain or anything in Dynamics. It could be SAP or Oracle or any other 3PL or 4PL. But a lot of the times it's like, okay, you want to do an allocation, but you don't know where you're going to allocate it from. I just know I need to allocate this product or this material for someplace. I don't want to have a warehouse. I don't want to dedicate it to a site or warehouse yet. And this allows you to do that. So it just does a grouping or like a higher level allocation on that. So kind of important when you actually look at the data, because not everything matches at a granular location level. This next one is kind of surprisingly good timing, because I have another customer that we do have material trace track within that with the serial numbers of items that are base finance and supply chain. Well, this is actually a service that'll do trace and track materials not within finance and supply chain, but other components of it. And so you'll be able to track the batch numbers and the serial numbers. You'll be able to track and report that. You'll be able to see the finished goods and the components, but not only in manufactured items, but assets What are the assets that I have? What are the machine tools or the assets that my customer has? Maybe I want to do some field service on that. So that's really nice and important. But it also has a nice shop floor control interface, or the MES system, manufacturing execution system, where you can report those components a whole lot easier. In planning, there's a nice rolling forecast, because usually you set a forecast and you set it and forget it, and it's like the time stuck. As time rolls on, you're kind of stuck in the past. This is a rolling forecast that automatically updates based upon the period that you have, which is the way that we really do business. This next thing is you complete mixed license plates with the mobile module. License plates is kind of a group of items that may be on a pallet or a skid or something else. So this way you can say that it's like you can actually move all this material with a mixed license plate easily versus with the mobile device, right? And they can run that flow themselves as they go through. This is a kind of an important one. So it's like this: warehouse inspect and process return items. Before we have an RMA process. If you have an RMA, you look it up, and it's like we see that inventory as it comes in the receiving dock. This has been there, so we can do that. But what if like it was an unintended or like unknown? They didn't notify us that they're actually going to send this material back. It's going to show up at the dock. What do? We can actually get this and look at it. And previously with the RMA, you'd inspect it when you receive it, and then you put a disposition code on it. Disposition code says, what do we do with it? Whether we scrap it or return it, put it back in the inventory. Are we going to give them credit back? Those type of things. It's a workflow to define what kind of execution we're going to do. Well, what this allows you to do is like it takes you that blind inspection. We'll delay that in, like we'll take the blind receipt, we'll inspect it later, and then follow the process as we need to, instead of having a very strict process onto that. So for the warehouse people, that's actually a really nice feature. This next one is kind of like a monitor status for the failed ship line. So it's like if you have a failed ship line that didn't create the work properly, it's like it'll rerun, and so you don't have to monitor, and it'll monitor itself, right? So a little bit on that. The last thing on this component of it is the major features is, we have a disconnected warehouse that we can have, right? So we can have what's called the manufacturer warehouse management only mode within finance and supply chain. So that can be disconnected. Now, a lot of companies say, hey, I have 3 legal entities or 4 legal entities, and I have 1 central distribution center, and I need to obfuscate or hide what company it came from. I just need my people to pick appropriately, right? So what it does is like it consolidates all that information in 1 legal entity, gets rid of that, for the users, for the transactional set, whether it's and handles it as 1 warehouse, and we can handle all those transaction sets and those intercompany sets behind the scenes and not worry about that. So just makes it really easy for folks. So as features, a couple features. So there's some cleanup features on this, like correct items that are released, and just making sure the database is more performant. Let's see, there is, this one is, let's see, which one? Oh, this one right here. Exclude items without on order quantity or planning optimization. So planning optimization, I've talked about this for the last several years, is just a more performant way to run master planning or MRP systems. Now, it's almost 100 times faster than it used to be, but there's, still we want it more performant. So oftentimes actually the way it runs, it'll run through everything that you have in those plans. But you can exclude items that you rarely sell, that there's nothing on the sales order, so don't worry about it, that are required items by that planning group. But you don't want to include those, so it actually just makes it more performant on that. So as you go through. Freezing time for planning fence is like we can auto execute based upon a freezing time. We're not going to worry too much about that. Inherit the inventory status for planned intercompany orders. So before it having its own default on the intercompany, now it's going to inherit that as long as they have the same statuses or the types on that other intercompany component. This one's really nice because it's like it'll item substitution for bill materials on planning optimization. So if you have a substitution, so if you have an item A, you don't have any in stock, you can use item B, which is more expensive, but you don't want to use it unless there's a need for it. You can actually have that automatically substituted. So you can actually make that lead time or that that required delivery time for that customer. So those are nice. Also, transport days to actually effectively and accurately calculate the time that the product's going to get to a customer. It'll include those transport days in between different locations or different warehouses into that. And then some like rounding up or down on that. I'm not just going to spend time on about if you do have, unit to measure conversions for your planning, you might want to just take a look at that, and it's going to round it up to make sure that you meet those requirements. There's list views for the MES system, or manufacturing execution, or often called shop floor control. So we can look at this instead of like a like a detailed view of this to actually report progress. We can actually look at a list view and say, okay, I'm clicking on this one, clicking on this one, clicking on this one, and get it done. So it's just a better interface. It's easier to work with for the guys on the shop floor. Let's skip through a couple of those. It's like recalculate. I'm not going to spend time on that. You can read that. That's kind of a detailed information about recreation of the delivery dates. This one's just nice and functional for the warehouse guys again. So you can have a default warehouse information on this, and it can be quite deep in a lot of different functions. But if you're not doing that all the time, just like you can do within finance and supply chain, a lot of other applications, you can RMC or right mouse click and say hide this, right, and create a view. And then you can have different views. So it's like you have a streamlined interface or a streamlined screen without all the superfluous things that may be on there. There's some blocking policies. It's like, so what are we going to do for items that are blocked, like based upon like a quality, and so you can unblock or block those items so they can't be used or can't be transferred or that aren't planned for. There's some things about some like license plate number calculation, or the size of the license plate. I'm not going to worry about that. The last thing on this that's actually kind of nice is about warehouse management. I talked a little bit about warehouse management, that user interface, but now there's an AI enhanced home screen for these users. So the first time they log into their device, it'll actually give them a personalized dashboard, a generative AI dashboard of what they're supposed to be working on or looking at during the day. So again, Bart, as we kind of chatted before, was, it's just going to change the way that we're doing our jobs every day. And it's like, I can't believe how fast this is kind of hitting us on all this AI, but it's even hitting us on the warehouse mobile device. So again, keep your seatbelts buckled and you're up for more. But that's all I had today, even though it's quite a bit, Bart. But
that was pretty dense. There was a lot of info in there, Dan.
There is, but it's like a lot of good features. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So there's some solution updates if you want to talk about those, Bart.
There's always a bunch of solution updates. Every 2 weeks, you see more and more stuff that just lands out there. So I just try to give a listing of it in case there's anything people pay attention to that matters in their business that they want to get the newest, latest, greatest on. That's a way to start playing with it.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else for this fortnight. So I think we probably should call it a wrap and see everybody in a couple weeks.
We'll see you after the next holiday. All right. Take care. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.